Emily invited her parents to a housewarming to give them this house, but they refused to come, saying, "As you are our main disappointment." So I revealed my secret. The next morning, they were standing on her doorstep with boxes. Her name is Emily, and for the past 3 years, she'd been working herself to the bone overtime. Weekends, holidays, she took it all. Her co-workers thought she was crazy, always volunteering for extra shifts and never taking vacations. Some gossiped that she was trying to escape a failed relationship. Others speculated she was saving for some exotic trip around the world. None of them knew the truth. She was saving for a house not for herself, but for her parents. Mom and Dad have lived in the same run-down place for almost 30 years. It's a small 2-bedroom house with peeling paint and creaky floorboards. Every time Emily visits, Dad complains about something new: the noisy neighbors who moved in last year, the pothole on their street that the city never fixes, or how the nearest grocery store is a 15-minute drive away. She'd sit there, smiling to herself, imagining the day she'd hand them the keys to a new house, a nice place in a good neighborhood with friendly neighbors and smooth roads, a place where they could enjoy their retirement without constant aggravation. Her younger sister, Sarah, never seemed bothered by their parents' situation. At 27, she lived with her boyfriend, Tom, in a rented apartment downtown. Sarah had bounced from job to job since college, always chasing the next big thing. Her latest obsession was starting her own business, though she never quite figured out what kind of business it would be. Every Saturday, their parents hosted family dinner. These dinners always followed the same pattern. Mom would cook something that took all day. Dad would pour wine that was too expensive for their budget, and Sarah would dominate the conversation with her latest ideas. "I'm thinking of launching a line of organic dog treats," she announced at one dinner, waving her fork enthusiastically. "The market is practically untapped." Mom and Dad put down their utensils, leaning forward with rapt attention. Emily sat there, pushing food around her plate, waiting for a pause to mention her own news. "I got promoted to senior financial analyst," she finally said, when Sarah stopped to take a breath. "It comes with a substantial raise and better benefits." "That's nice, dear," Mom said, her eyes already drifting back to Sarah. "So, Sarah, would you bake these treats yourself?" It didn't even sting anymore. Emily had grown accustomed to being the less interesting daughter. Sarah was the creative one, the free spirit, the one with big dreams. Emily was just the reliable one with the steady job who always helped with the bills. And she did help a lot. When Dad needed dental work that their insurance wouldn't cover, Emily wrote the check. When their water heater broke in the middle of winter, she paid for the replacement. When Sarah needed seed money for her handmade jewelry business that lasted exactly 3 months, guess who funded it? But despite all that, Emily kept saving. Every bonus, every raise, every tax refund went straight into her house fund. After 3 years of living like a hermit in her cramped apartment, eating ramen noodles more often than she'd like to admit, she finally had enough for a down payment. She reached out to her friend Melissa, who worked as a realtor. "I need a house," she told her over coffee one day. "Not for me, for my parents. Here's what I'm looking for: good neighborhood, preferably with older residents, close to shops and medical facilities, no busy streets, and definitely no neighbors with motorcycles." "Tall order," Melissa said, but she took notes and promised to start looking. While Melissa hunted for the perfect house, life continued as usual. Emily worked, she saved, and she attended Saturday dinners, where Sarah announced her latest business idea. Now it was custom-painted sneakers, while their parents hung on her every word. At one of these dinners, Emily couldn't help smiling to herself, knowing she was getting closer to her surprise. The down payment money was ready, and Melissa had a few promising leads. "What are you grinning about?" Sarah asked, interrupting her monologue about shoe design. Emily blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, just got some good news at work. Another promotion." Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically. "God, Emily, you're so easy to please. A pat on the head from your corporate overlords, and you're grinning like you won the lottery. Meanwhile, I'm working on becoming independent. Tom and I have been developing a business plan for a boutique marketing agency. Once we get it off the ground, we'll never have to answer to anyone again." Mom leaned forward eagerly. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. How much would something like that cost to start?" Sarah casually twirled her fork. "Around $200,000 so, give or take." Mom gasped. That's a lot of money. Where would you get that kind of money? Dad asked. Then, as if choreographed, they all turned to look at Emily. She felt her face grow hot. What? Well, Mum said carefully, you've been doing so well at work with all those promotions and bonuses you're always mentioning. I don't have $200.0 lying around, Emily said flatly. Sarah snorted. Of course not. You never want to help me. You just like to lord your success over everyone while keeping all your money to yourself. I've helped you plenty. Emily shot back before she could stop herself. Remember your jewelry business, your food blog, your photography studio. I invested in all of those. And what happened? They all failed within months. The room went silent. Sarah's face turned scarlet. She pushed back from the table and ran to the bathroom. When she returned 15 minutes later, her eyes were red and puffy, and she didn't speak another word to Emily all evening. Mom and Dad kept giving her disappointed looks, as if she'd kicked a puppy instead of stating facts. I'm sorry, Emily finally said, just to break the tension. I should get going. She drove home feeling like garbage. Was she being selfish? Should she give Sarah the money instead of buying a house for her parents? No, she decided. Sarah had proven time and again that she couldn't stick with anything. If Emily gave her that money, it would vanish into another failed venture. Besides, this house wasn't just for her parents. It was for her too. It was proof that she mattered, that her hard work meant something. A month passed, and Emily threw herself into work even harder than before. The sting of that disastrous dinner faded as Melissa sent her more and more house listings. Melissa was a godsend, filtering properties based on Emily's specific requirements and scheduling viewings around her hectic work schedule. This one's promising, Melissa said one evening, showing her photos of a single-story ranch house with a neat front yard, 3 bedrooms, renovated kitchen, quiet cul-de-sac with mostly retirees. There's a grocery store and pharmacy within walking distance. Emily scrolled through the pictures, imagining Mum and Dad there. The kitchen had the farmhouse sink Mum always wanted. The backyard was small but manageable. Dad wouldn't complain about mowing it. The master bedroom was spacious with large windows, unlike their current cave-like room. It's perfect, she said, feeling a flutter of excitement. Let's make an offer. The process moved quickly. Her credit was excellent, her down payment substantial, and the sellers were motivated. Within weeks, she was signing mortgage documents, still giddy with anticipation of her parents' reaction. The house was empty but full of potential. She walked through the rooms, mentally placing her parents' furniture in each space. Mum's antique hutch would fit perfectly against that wall. Dad's recliner would face the large living room window with a view of the quiet street. She'd have to help them move, of course, but that would be part of the surprise. Saturday dinner came around again. Emily hadn't spoken to Sarah or her parents since their argument, but this news couldn't wait. She pulled up to their familiar driveway, practiced her announcement in her head one last time, and stepped inside with a bottle of champagne. Sarah was already there with Tom, gesturing animatedly to their parents. When Emily walked in, the conversation abruptly halted. What were you guys talking about? She asked. Setting the champagne on the counter. Sarah shrugged. Nothing that would interest you. Emily didn't take the bait. Actually, I have some news to share. What is it? Mum asked, not looking particularly interested as she stirred something on the stove. Emily took a deep breath. I bought a house. It's in Oakwood Heights, 3 bedrooms. Great neighborhood, close to everything. I'm having a housewarming party in 2 weeks and wanted to invite you all. She didn't mention that the house was actually for them. That revelation would come at the housewarming, when she'd have all their friends present to witness their joy and gratitude. She'd even started the paperwork to transfer the deed to their names after the party. Sarah's face flushed crimson. She jumped up from her chair and thrust some papers at Emily, the same ones she'd been showing their parents when Emily arrived. How could you? She shouted. Tom and I have been planning our business launch for months. We showed Mom and Dad our business plan today. We need investors, and you know it. But instead of helping family, you go and buy yourself a fancy house. Emily stared at her, dumbfounded. Wait, you actually expect me to fund your business after all your failed attempts? Why would I do that instead of meeting my own needs? Because that's what family does, Sarah screamed. God, You're such a selfish bastard. You've always been jealous of me." Tom had the decency to look embarrassed, but he stood by Sarah's side as she grabbed her purse. "Come on, Tom. I can't stand to be in the same room with her." They stormed out, the front door slamming so hard that Mom's decorative plates rattled on the wall. Emily turned to her parents, expecting them to acknowledge how unreasonable Sarah was being. Instead, Mom shook her head slowly. "Emily, couldn't you have helped your sister instead of spending all that money on yourself? She really needs this chance." "Are you serious?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've helped her with every harebrained scheme she's cooked up. I've helped you with bills and repairs. And now I'm selfish for buying my own house." Dad wouldn't meet her eyes. "Sarah has real talent, Emily. She just needs a proper chance to prove herself." Emily looked from one parent to the other, suddenly seeing them clearly. They would always take Sarah's side. They would always think she deserved more, no matter how many times she failed, no matter how hard Emily worked. "I need to go," she said, leaving her untouched dinner plate and the champagne she'd brought to celebrate. She drove home in a daze, hurt and angry, but still clinging to her original plan. After all, they didn't know the house was meant for them. Once they realized what she'd done, how hard she'd worked to give them this gift, surely they'd see how much she cared. The surprise would fix everything. The next day, she went online and posted photos of her new house on social media, announcing her housewarming party. She tagged friends, co-workers, even distant relatives, everyone she could think of. The responses flooded in with congratulations and confirmations to attend. She sent a separate message to her parents and Sarah, giving them the date and time. No response came, but she wasn't worried. They'd calm down and come around. They had to. This house was for them after all. She spent the next 2 weeks painting, decorating, and preparing for the party. She chose colors she knew her mother would love and arranged furniture with her father's habits in mind. Every decision was made with them in consideration. Then, 2 days before the housewarming, she heard a sharp knock at her apartment door. When she opened it, Sarah stood there, arms crossed and eyes blazing. "We need to talk," Sarah said, pushing past her into the living room. Emily crossed her arms. "What do you want, Sarah?" Sarah paced around the living room like she owned it, running her finger along the bookshelf, examining the framed photos of Emily's college graduation. "I want to talk about that house you bought." "What about it?" "You need to sell it," Sarah said flatly, turning to face her. "Sell it and give me the money for my business." The way she said it, so matter of fact, as if Emily would definitely agree, made her blood boil. "Are you out of your mind? I'm not selling my house, especially not to fund another one of your failed ventures." Sarah's face darkened. "Failed ventures? What the hell is that supposed to mean?" "It means exactly what you think it means," Emily said, finally letting years of frustration pour out. "The jewelry business I gave you $5.0 for. That lasted 3 months. The food blog I bought camera equipment for. You abandoned that after 6 posts. The photography studio Mum and Dad helped you rent. You used it twice before deciding photography wasn't your passion after all. Those were learning experiences." Sarah shot back. "Every entrepreneur has failures before they succeed." "Right. And how many learning experiences are you entitled to at other people's expense?" Sarah stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You don't get it, do you? You never have. You're so boring and ordinary with your corporate job and your retirement plan. I'm trying to build something meaningful, something that's mine, but you're too jealous to help me." Emily shook her head in disbelief. "Jealous of what? Your string of failures, your inability to hold down a job for more than 6 months. At least I'm trying," Sarah shouted. "At least I have dreams." "What do you have?" "A cubicle and a sad little apartment. And now a house you'll live in all alone because you can't even keep a boyfriend." That stung, but Emily refused to let her see it. "I'm not selling my house, Sarah. Not now, not ever. And I'm certainly not giving you $200,000 for whatever half-baked business idea you and Tom have cooked up." "You don't understand," Sarah insisted, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "This time, it's different. We have a solid business plan. We've done market research. All we need is capital. Then get a loan or find investors who actually believe in your vision. But it won't be me." Sarah's face contorted with anger. "You know what your problem is, Emily. You have no entrepreneurial spirit. You're a follower, not a leader. You'll never understand what it takes to create something from nothing because you're too afraid to try. Emily'd had enough. No. Sarah, you'll never understand what it takes to actually finish something you start. You don't have an entrepreneurial spirit, you have commitment issues. You jump from idea to idea, expecting everyone else to fund your journey of self-discovery while you figure out what you want to be when you grow up. The color drained from Sarah's face. For a moment, she just stared at Emily, speechless. Then her eyes narrowed to slits. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly. "When my business takes off and it will don't come asking for a job." She stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door so hard that the picture frames on the wall rattled. Emily stood there for a long time, shaking with anger and hurt. Despite Sarah's threats, she continued preparing for the housewarming party. She bought food, drinks, decorations. She rented tables and chairs. She even hired a cleaning service to make sure every inch of the house sparkled. The day before the party, her phone rang. It was her mother. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of her. "Hello, Emily." Her mother's voice was cold. "I need to talk to you about this cruel thing you said to your sister." Emily closed her eyes and counted to 10. "What cruel thing would that be, Mom?" "You know perfectly well, calling her a failure, saying she'll never succeed in business. How could you be so heartless?" "I didn't say she'd never succeed," Emily corrected. "I said she hasn't succeeded yet, and I'm not willing to invest in another one of her attempts." "Well, you broke her heart. She was counting on you. We've always known you were selfish, Emily, but this takes the cake." "Selfish?" Emily repeated incredulously. "I've been helping all of you for years, every time you needed money for repairs. Every time Sarah needed startup funds, I've always been there. And now, when your sister needs you most, you buy yourself a fancy house instead. It's disgraceful." Emily almost blurted out that the house was supposed to be for them, but something stopped her. "I work hard for my money, Mom. I'm allowed to spend it how I want." "Well, let me tell you something," her mother said, her voice trembling with anger. "You've always been the disappointing one in this family. Sarah has talent and vision. What do you have? A boring job and no personal life. You don't even have a boyfriend. You're 30 years old. For God's sake." Emily felt like she'd been slapped. "Mom, I'm not finished. Sarah is worth 10 of you. She's creative and brave and willing to take risks. You've always been jealous of her, and now you're trying to hold her back because you can't stand to see her succeed where you failed as a person." Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but she refused to let her hear her cry. "Is that really what you think of me? It's what we all think. Your father and I are absolutely disgusted with your behavior. Don't expect us at your housewarming party. We don't want to see you right now or maybe ever again." The line went dead before Emily could respond. She sat on her couch, phone still clutched in her hand, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, something hardened inside her. The house she'd bought with such love and hope suddenly seemed like a monument to her own foolishness. Why had she killed herself working to please people who would never be pleased with her? The next day, the day of the housewarming, she woke up with a new resolve. The house would be hers. She'd live in it herself, enjoy the fruits of her labor, and stop trying to buy her family's approval. As guests began to arrive for the party, she greeted each one with genuine warmth: friends from work, neighbors from her apartment building, college buddies who'd driven in for the occasion. All were welcome. Only her family was missing. And for once, she didn't mind. After everyone had arrived and had a drink in hand, she clinked a glass to get their attention. "Thank you all for coming today," she said, her voice strong and clear. "This house means a lot to me, but not for the reasons some of you might think." She took a deep breath, then continued, "Originally, I bought this house for my parents. I worked overtime for 3 years to save for the down payment. I wanted to surprise them today by giving them the deed." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few people exchanged glances. "But recent events have made me realize that this house should be mine. I've earned it, and I'm going to enjoy living here." The housewarming party continued late into the evening. By midnight, the last guests had left, and Emily was alone in her new house. The phrase still felt strange but increasingly right. She stayed up cleaning, arranging furniture, and imagining her future there. Around 1:00 in the morning, Her phone began to buzz with messages, all from her parents. "Emily, we need to talk. Please call us back. We may have overreacted. Of course we'll accept the house." She laughed out loud at that last one. Of course they would. Someone at the party had obviously told them about her speech, and now they were backpedaling furiously. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned off her phone, made up the bed in what was now definitely her bedroom, and slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The next morning, she woke to sunlight streaming through windows that were hers. She made coffee in a kitchen that was hers. She sat on a porch that was hers and watched the neighborhood come to life. Then she heard a car pull into her driveway. Her parents stepped out, each carrying a suitcase. Dad was also struggling with a large cardboard box. They marched up to her front door with the confidence of people who believed they already owned the place. She opened the door before they could ring the bell. "Morning," she said, blocking the entrance. Mum looked past her into the house. "Aren't you going to invite us in?" Dad asked, shifting the box in his arms. "That depends. Why are you here with suitcases?" Mum smiled brightly. "Well, to move in. Of course. We got your messages from the party. We understand this was meant to be a surprise for us." Emily leaned against the doorframe. "Funny, because yesterday you were disgusted with me and never wanted to see me again." Mum, at least, had the grace to look embarrassed. "I may have spoken hastily. You know how I worry about Sarah." "Yes, I know exactly how you worry about Sarah, how you've always worried about Sarah, how you've never worried about me." "That's not fair," Dad protested weakly. "Isn't it? You've taken every penny I've given you over the years without a second thought. You've watched me help Sarah time and again, but the one time I do something for myself, you call me selfish and cut me off." "We were upset," Mum said. "You have to understand Sarah's dream means everything to her. And what about my dreams? Did those ever matter to you?" Her parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Of course they did," Dad said, "but you've always been so capable. Sarah needs more support. Well, she'll have to get it somewhere else. This house is mine now." Mum's friendly facade cracked. "You can't be serious. You told everyone you bought it for us. And I told everyone I changed my mind. This house is in my name. I'm living here. We're your parents." Mum's voice rose sharply. "You owe us. I don't owe you anything. Not anymore." Dad set down the box, his face reddening. "This is ridiculous. We'll contest this legally if we have to. You promised us a house. I never promised you anything in writing," Emily said calmly. "And I never told you about the house until after I'd already bought it. Good luck with that legal case." "You ungrateful," Mom started, but Emily cut her off. "I suggest you leave now. I have unpacking to do." "This isn't over," Dad said, picking up his suitcase again. "You're making a terrible mistake. The mistake was thinking I needed to buy your love," Emily replied. "I won't make it again." She closed the door on their shocked faces, locked it, and leaned against it, heart pounding but resolve stronger than ever. Over the following weeks, they tried everything: guilt-trip texts, angry voicemails, flying monkeys in the form of relatives calling to tell her how heartbroken her parents were. She blocked numbers, limited social media, and focused on making her house a home. 6 months later, she heard through the grapevine that her parents had taken out a massive loan to fund Sarah's business venture, some kind of artisanal pet food company. The business was already struggling, surprising no one except perhaps her parents and Sarah. Emily's house is now fully decorated exactly as she wants it. She's planted a garden in the backyard and joined the neighborhood association. She even started dating a kind architect who lives down the street, so much for being perpetually single. Sometimes she wonders what would have happened if she'd gone through with her original plan. Would her parents have appreciated her sacrifice? Would they have sold the house to fund Sarah's business anyway? Would Sarah have succeeded with more money behind her? Deep down, she knows the answers. Her parents would have taken her gift for granted, just as they always had. Sarah would have burned through the money and moved on to the next great idea. And Emily would have been left with nothing but a mortgage payment for a house she didn't live in. Instead, she has this, a home of her own, friends who value her, and the quiet knowledge that she finally stood up for herself. The doorbell rings. It's her date, right on time. As she grabs her purse and heads out for dinner, she feels a sense of peace wash over her. This is her life now, and for the first time she's living it for herself.